Captain America Brave New World had just come out over the last weekend, and well, people have had multiple different reactions to it. Most of them have been mixed. See, the best reactions so far have been basically saying the movie is good. Not great, just good. Which isn't, well, the most best endorsement, the most best endorsement for the film, but alright, it's good, it's a fair use of your time. While the worst reviews have been saying that it's horrible, perhaps the worst MCU movie to come out recently. Now, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of those two things. That said, it is quite surprising for at least a good deal of people to see that Captain America franchise, one of the biggest and most well-loved franchises, which has some of the best movies in the entire MCU, to have fallen so far to when it's just good at best and bad at worst. So, but the thing is, while a lot of people are so surprised about this, I'm not really too shocked about it because when looking at the actual characters and everything that was put around, or just the very idea of Sam Wilson as Captain America, you can see that that idea was always doomed to fail. At least it was doomed to fail without further work put into it. What's up, guys? I'm Black Tiger, and I'm here to talk about comics, but specifically, I'm here to talk about Captain America Brave New World. Now, Captain America Brave New World, the reason why it's failing and the reason why Sam Wilson as a character is not built to take on the role of Captain America is because he was built as a side character. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the thing is, all the major and best superhero characters have one, I would say about four main qualities that are very important for their characters. Those four qualities usually go about different things, such as first thing is a good backstory, right? You need a great backstory for your superhero character. Now, if you look at people like Superman, Batman, everyone knows their backstories. With Captain America, you got a pretty great backstory that gives a nice drive for him to be a superhero in the first place. You have the, kid from Brooklyn in the 1940s who joins the war effort in this experimental soldier system in order to try to be, to actually have a impact in the war. A very patriotic idea that was best used in the 1940s era. And then of course you have him get sit into the ice, stuck in ice for a good 70 years, and come out in the modern day where you have that old timey optimism, 40s type optimism, being completely juxtaposed against the more modern day cynical way of looking at the world. So you have a black and white view opposed to a more cynical view. Now that backstory alone provides you all types of opportunities in order to actually make the character and make a story work. And on top of that, you put that with something else, right? Put that with the next step, which is the personality. Well, the personality we just talked about. He's an optimistic 1940s Brooklyn kid with all the great patriotism and, well, most importantly, optimism about the future that you would have, the black and white morality code that he kind of has. Again, when you put that in the more gray area that we tend to operate in the modern day, it makes an interesting, juxtaposition, an interesting contrast that can be made there. So you can already see why that personality would be pretty good. So now you have a personality, you have a main character with a great backstory. Now all you need is great powers and abilities. Well, you give him those powers and abilities, or iconic powers and abilities. You give him the super soldier serum, which of course allows him to be superhuman strength and speed and durability, healing factor, all those things. Then you give him a shield, a vibranium shield, the unbreakable Captain America shield that can block bullets and can bounce off walls like a boomerang. So when you look at that, you now have a pretty interesting bunch of powers there. And then you do the final step of making a superhero, which is the step of actually giving them a bunch of characters to bounce off of. So what type of characters did you let him bounce off of? You let him bounce off of characters like, Iron Man. Iron Man's a modernist, so you have this modernist character, this man of the future type character, having to deal with this character who has a more black and white morality, a man out of time. So that's already very interesting with someone like Iron Man. You have the same thing with someone like Black Widow, who's literally built around this idea of gray morality. That's what she does. She does, one quote she has in Winter Soldier is that she thought she knew whose lies she was telling. I mean, that's the type of person she is. So you have a really interesting dynamic there of two characters who have opposing views there. And then, of course, you have people like Nick Fury, the quintessential spy. You now have a whole bunch of very interesting characters. You have other characters like Bucky, his main friend, the only other guy who's also at a time with him. And, of course, you have finally Falcon himself, who was, as I said before, built a side character to be this military guy who would really identify with Captain America. It would be a situation where Captain America would be a hero, and you have Falcon's patriotism as a military person really shining through and make them connect as characters. And then, of course, on top of these different characters, you also have villains. Now, that's the final step I would probably say, actually, is probably the villain step. You need to have a good deal of epic villains that you can bounce off of. You have Hydra, which is, a legendary group of villains with their, more fascistic tendencies. These guys who want to destroy America and destroy the American dream. This is absolutely perfect for a Captain America person to go against. So now you basically have a bunch of villains, you have a bunch of heroes that you can, and side characters you can bounce off of. You have a main character, you have a backstory, you have powers. You put this whole thing together and you have a, top tier A-list superhero. Now, when you look at Falcon, Falcon does not have these things, not within the MCU at least. Within the MCU, look at his backstory. He doesn't really have a backstory, so to speak. His backstory is actually incredibly bare bones. He just was part of a experimental military program, not even like as far as actually changing up the character or the powers itself, just giving him a wingsuit, which as cool as that is, as a side character thing, the wingsuit doesn't have any type of real meaning to him. It doesn't really seem to affect his personality or anything like that. It doesn't even seem to be something too experimental. The only thing about it is that he had a fellow soldier die in combat in one of these missions with him. Which again is sad, but again, you could just put this as without the wingsuit. The wingsuit doesn't really matter to that whole situation. So you have a piece of equipment without a lot of character to it, and even the source of his powers don't have any character to it. Nothing actually adds to the character itself. So you have a bit of an issue there. Not bad for a side character, but for a main character, you need something more there. So you don't have a backstory, but you do have a great personality. I think Anthony Mackie does a good job of having charisma. He's a very cool character. I think that we see throughout the movies, especially with his friendship with Captain America, and even his dynamic with someone like Bucky, he has a shot of having a solid character there, a character that a lot of people really liked and really identified with. And of course, I just mentioned with Bucky, you have one relationship, not a lot of relationships, just one though. So you have one interesting relationship with Bucky, and an interesting relationship with Cap. That's about it. Sharon Carter and people like that can also be, characters that can kind of identify with him a little bit, but not too much, honestly. They kind of don't do a really good job of making sure those characters can really be close to. He doesn't have a real long conversation with basically any character besides maybe Bucky and Cap themselves. So the relationship problem is not that great. You don't have good relationships. You don't have very good, when it comes to his character. His character's all right, but it's not amazing. His storyline, I mean his backstory is not great at all. It's pretty bare bones. And then, of course, look at the last two things, his powers and abilities. His powers and abilities are just the wings. You add the shield onto it. It doesn't really help a whole lot. Now, of course, in the new movie, they add in stuff like, they give him more Wakandan tech, vibranium tech and whatnot, which is pretty good. A good idea to do, actually. I think it's actually a solid idea, but unfortunately, Wakandan tech still is not something that's his. That's Black Panther's. So you're kind of making this hand-me-down superhero, where he's getting hand-me-downs from other superheroes who are doing things for him. So that's not that great for a Captain America type figure. So now, as you can see, he doesn't have a backstory. He doesn't have great powers. He doesn't have great relationships. And of course, the main problem, which is for a superhero you really need this, is he doesn't have villains. He has no villains that really impact with him, that really disagree with him on a fundamental level. You could have given him Hydra, which would have been sort of interesting. You could have done that idea. It's something that you could have done to make it work. I'll probably make another video later on going over what I would have done with the character. But ultimately speaking, you didn't really have a lot of villains to go with, which is why they had to go with someone like Red Hulk, who's not even a Captain America villain. He's essentially a Hulk villain, always has been. So you don't have a villain, you don't have a backstory, you don't have great characters to really bounce off of, you don't have great relationships, you don't have powers that are very interesting. You can see now that he was set up for failure. He doesn't have anything really. He was a character that they just wanted to have a black Captain America, and they didn't think about doing the work in order to make this character actually work. And that's a real shame because you look at someone who was built to be more of a main character, who's in the same movie. Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah Bradley is built as a main character. He has an interesting backstory, being experimented on by by the government, and they trying to make the new Captain America. You have the idea of villains he's going versus, which would, as him as the new Captain America, would be going versus villains like he'd be going versus the Hydra and people like the Surface Society, which was in the movie, but of course they decided not to use them correctly. MCU can barely do anything correctly these days. But you look at someone like Isaiah Bradley, he actually had a shot of being a main character. He's at the built that way, but Falcon is not built that way within the MCU. Now, of course, I think in the comics he has a lot more things that he can do. In the comics, he has a lot more interesting powers. He has a lot more interesting, backstories and so on and so forth. But within the movies, what they built for him, they didn't really give him all that, and you would have had to then go ahead and give him that things. I mean, put it this way, he doesn't even have a love interest within the movie. That used to be a standard practice for superheroes, to get a love interest so they could have this idea of maybe even starting a family and have this sort of social life. He doesn't have that. The most social life thing he has a sidekick, but the sidekick, again, I think his name is Torres, and we really don't know who he is as far as what he's ever done. We don't know why him and Cap are in the same area as each other. We don't know what their dynamic is really, besides the basic quirky type of sidekick dynamic. I mean, they really did nothing with him. They literally gave him nothing. They set him up for failure, and that is why the Captain America movie was always doomed to fail, because they had a whole lot of work they had to get done in a singular movie. But unfortunately, instead of actually doing that work and making sure that their character of Sam Wilson was a top tier character, doing the work to make him a A-list character, they instead decided to simply basically wing it. They decided to throw away all the different things they could have done and wing it, and as a result, the character was basically going to fail. Again, it's also going to be another problem that he's going to be the leader of the MCU. That's the idea they have kind of put up there. He's the leader of the Avengers eventually. But again, with the character who has no relationships with anyone, you're going to have a significant problem with that. So if the MCU wants to bring him in as a main character, as a leader of the Avengers type of character, they're going to have to really do some work with it. They're really going to have to make him better. Now, I said before, I'm going to make a video breaking down how to make him a better character. And again, to be fair, he's not the only character the MCU has ruined and done so badly with so recently, because you could look at characters like Thor, which that's a whole other video in of itself. Doctor Strange, another guy who's had a shot of being the next big character in the MCU, and they just completely and utterly dropped the ball there. But yes, there are characters that can be done. I don't think this is completely unfixable. Even now, I think you could still do some work if you really wanted to and try to fix the character. I just don't see Marvel getting it done right now. They just seem to be in a weird place where they can't seem to make any good decisions. Now, of course, we'll see if that changes in the future, but that's my take on that for now. Well, guys, I'd like to thank you guys for, tuning into the video. Like and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.